Good morning and happy Monday. It is week 4 of virtual learning. Isn't that crazy that we've been doing this for a month? But this week we are going to be talking about geometry and especially how to classify those different shapes by their angles, their sides, and just the different subsets. So just like last week, I am showing you your Monday activities. Hopefully this is helping you to make sure you're not getting lost with all the assignments. So for today in math, all you're going to do is watch this mini lesson video, which you're already doing, and then the quadrilateral sort activity. So today we're going to take a few notes over polygons and quadrilaterals. If you have a piece of paper, you can totally take the notes. If you just want to look at my notes, that's cool too. And then after the notes, we are going to look at the activity for today and go over a few things. Okay, so to begin, we are going to start taking notes about polygons. So this will look really familiar to the polygon tree we created in your journal, but at last we don't have our journal, so I'm going to make one on a piece of paper. Okay, so when we talk about two-dimensional shapes in geometry, we can classify different two-dimensional shapes by the number of sides that they have. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is a polygon. Okay, and this is going to be our polygon tree. Now remember, a polygon is anything that has 3 or more sides. Okay. Now remember, polygons only talk about 2D shapes. Okay, and it's basically everything but a circle. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about in our polygon tree is triangles. Now, we're not going to talk about triangles today. That's going to be tomorrow, but that would be our first subset of our polygons. And remember, we talked about subsets are like different families. So if you think of this as like a family tree, right? Here's one side of the family, and then there's going to be another side, right? Okay, so our next subset within our polygon tree is going to be what we're talking about today, which is quadrilaterals. Okay, so remember we talked about quadrilaterals are any shape that has 4 sides, right? Okay, so within our quadrilateral subset, we can classify quadrilaterals differently by the number of parallel sides. Okay, so one that we didn't talk about in our journal, but that you might see today, is the quadrilaterals that have no sets of parallel sides. Okay, so these are no parallel sides. And the major one that we talk about that has no parallel sides is a kite. Okay, now don't judge my drawing. Y'all know it all by now. My drawings aren't the best. Okay, alright, so if you look at my kite right here, it doesn't have any sets of parallel sides because eventually these sides will cross if it gets big enough. Okay, so that's one subset of a quadrilateral. The second subset is the quadrilaterals that have one set of parallel sides. So basically, if you think about these quadrilaterals, if you think about these as cousins, you will probably be able to tell the difference. So this is one set of cousins, this is another, okay? You just need to think about this polygon tree as like a family tree. So under the one set of parallel sides, okay, the only shape that we have there is a trapezoid. Okay, now We know that this is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides, right? But then it also has one set of parallel sides, the top and the bottom. Okay? So this trapezoid is a quadrilateral, but it cannot be classified as a kite because it does have one set of parallel sides. Okay? Alright, the second subset of quadrilaterals that we can talk about is the ones that have 2 sets of parallel sides. Okay, so the first shape that we're going to talk about that has 2 sets of parallel sides is a parallelogram. Okay, and again, please don't judge my parallelogram. It is not perfect. And as we all know, I am not an artiste. Okay, just like a trapezoid, right? Our parallelogram has 4 sides. Okay, and it also has 2 sets of parallel lines. And if you remember, these arrows just tell us that this side and this side are parallel, and this side are parallel. Okay? Now, a parallelogram can also have different subsets of itself. Okay? So our next subset that we can classify is a rectangle. Okay, so a rectangle can be a parallelogram, and it can also be a quadrilateral. Okay, it's a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides, right? But it can also be classified as a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides, but it also has 4 right angles. Okay? And remember, right angles have 90 degrees. Okay? So remember, as you go up the tree, remember you can talk about a rectangle can be a rectangle, but it can also be a parallelogram, which it can also be a quadrilateral, which also makes it a polygon, right? It's kind of like a map, a road map. It's a crazy road map, but it's a road map. Okay, another subset of a parallelogram is what we call a rhombus. Now, it does somewhat look like a kite, but these sides are even and they're parallel. Okay? So again, it's a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. Okay? Now, here's what makes a rhombus different than a rectangle. A rhombus has 4 equal sides. Unlike the rectangle that has these 2 sides that are equal and these sides that are equal. Okay? But it still also has 2 sets of parallel lines. Okay? So again, just like we talked about with the rectangle, a rhombus can be a rhombus, but it can also be a parallelogram, and it can also be a quadrilateral, which makes it a polygon. Okay? It's kind of like a food chain. I know y'all are talking about those. That's kind of what it's like. Alright, so there is one quadrilateral that can be classified as all of these shapes combined. Okay? And that is a square. Okay? Again, all the sides are equal, so you have 4 equal sides. You have 4 right angles. And then you also have 2 sets of parallel lines. Okay? So, just like we talked about with the rhombus and the rectangle, a square can be classified as a rectangle, it can be classified as a rhombus, it can be classified as a parallelogram. Okay? It can also be classified as a quadrilateral, or a polygon. So basically a square is pretty much everything on this side of the polygon tree. Okay? And if you need to, I left the picture of our polygon tree in your slide deck. So if you need to go back and revisit that, you can. Okay? All right, so let's look at Monday's assignment. So today's assignment is a quadrilateral sort activity. Okay? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to watch this short video. Okay? And it's talking all about different quadrilaterals. There is your geometry notes that we created, because I know y'all don't have your journal, so this is the next best thing. Okay, after you watch the video, you're going to write down or type in 3 things that you learned from the video, 2 questions you have, and 1 thing that surprised you. Okay, pretty simple. All right, the next step is you are going to sort these shapes into quadrilaterals or not quadrilaterals. Now remember, we talked about it. Quad means that it has 4 sides. So if I look right here, I have a triangle. Well, I definitely know that a triangle has 3 sides. So it's going to go into the not quadrilateral side. Okay? So you're just going to sort all of those shapes there. All right, on your next slide. Okay, this looks a whole lot like my fancy quadrilateral tree that I just drew. Okay, so everything over here is considered a quadrilateral. So what you're doing is looking at the shapes and determining, does it have no parallel lines, 1 set, or 2? So when I look, I notice that there's a kite right there, right? And just like I talked about in my notes, a kite has no parallel sides. Now their kite is a better drawing than mine was, but still same thing. So we're going to put that in the bubble like that, where the no parallel lines are. Okay? Now if I remember back to my notes, I talked about a trapezoid has 1 set of parallel lines. So I'm going to put that right there. Okay? And if you notice, there's another trapezoid right here. It looks very similar, but if you notice right here, this trapezoid has a right angle, right? It has a 90-degree angle right there. That's going to be important in the next slide, because it's going to ask you, can a quadrilateral have a 90-degree angle? And that is a perfect example of a 90-degree angle. Okay? All right, so this looks just like the one we just made. So if you remember correctly, the first subset of our 2 sets of parallel lines was a parallelogram. Okay? So I'm not going to do any more for you. I just wanted to get you started so that you weren't totally confused. Okay? On the last slide, it says quadrilateral true or false. You will type true next to the statement if it is true, and false next to the statement if it's false. If you just want to put T and F, that works for me. Okay? So all you're doing is reading through those statements, putting true or false. Okay? And the last slide. Now, we have noticed that y'all are working, but you're not turning it in. So if you're finished with this, go ahead. Go back to Google Classroom, click Turn In. Okay? So that I don't have to message you on Friday and say, did you do this assignment? Because it's not complete. Okay? All right, if you need me, I will be on on Zoom and on Google Classroom. Okay? I have also uploaded a math research project for y'all, number 4. It's in the enrichment folder. If you finish this and you don't have anything else you want to do, you can go look at that. Okay? If you have any questions, please let me know. Y'all have a happy Monday.